This is the Debunking Economics Podcast with Steve Keen and Phil Dobbie.
The Archives.
Episode 155. Facebook's Libra could be really good news.
Well, it's been all over the news in the last week. Facebook wants to establish a currency. Is this just another step in their quest for world power? Or has the press got the wrong handle on this? Is it actually a good thing for the planet, and particularly for underdeveloped countries, rather than just another way for Facebook to coerce us into releasing even more information about ourselves? What does Steve Keen think? That's today on the Debunking Economics Podcast. So Facebook recently announced they were going to launch a global digital currency by the first half of 2020. It's going to be called Libra, and like the tampons, and it's going to be run by a company.
I like the star sign too.
Or the star sign. It's going to be run by a company in Geneva with partners including MasterCard, Visa, Uber and Vodafone. You can find out more about it, including white paper on how it's all going to work at Libra.org. So, Steve, I mean, on the one side, it sounds like a grab for power. I mean, Facebook's got 2.4 billion users. Imagine if they controlled a currency as well. Just imagine how much power that would give them. Mm-hmm. But if you read the Libra website, their focus, at least for now, is to provide access to finance and banking for the 1.7 billion adults, they say, who have no access to a bank. And 1 billion of them do have access to a phone, not necessarily a smartphone, but they have access to a phone of some sort. So, I mean, on that basis, and given that Facebook is just one of many partners, maybe this makes it a noble venture rather than something we should be concerned about.
Yeah, it's an intriguing one because there's so many elements where you can see the initial reaction is, ugh, like Facebook, ugh.
Yeah, which is the angle the press has taken without, making the point that I've just done, which is their core reason for being.
Well, I mean, the idea that the Libra Foundation or that they're part of it, you don't want Facebook in control of the data. So what do? They've got a thing called Libra, currently with 28 members. Intention to start with 100 when it launches. Each has got to put in 10 million of their own cash to establish it. So it's a bit like, in that sense, it is a bit like forming a bank or raising initial equity capital, and they've only got one vote. And, of course, they might have a lot of influence, but some of the other people voting include PayPal, Visa, et cetera, et cetera. So, you're not talking a giant amongst minnows. You're talking a giant amongst giants. So the possibility of Facebook dominating Libra in the way people are talking about Facebook bringing out this currency, they've addressed that. And this is what I find quite it's taken me back a bit because,
well, they have for now.
Pardon? It has for now. That's what happens. Yeah. But it's addressed most of the things you'd worry about with the cryptocurrencies or Facebook being involved have been addressed here, and that's what's remarkable. That they really have sat down and thought, okay, what are people going to object to? How can we address that? And the way they've addressed it is not just paper mache. It's a serious addressing of it by, in the case of the Libra Foundation, them having only one vote. And like in terms of cryptocurrencies, the other extreme, one of my gripes about cryptocurrencies, as you know, is that the most popular one, Bitcoin, allows something of the order of 7 transactions a second across the globe, which, it wouldn't even cover the shopping centre that I live near. Yeah. Whereas the Libra is 1,000 a second.
Yeah, and hugely energy intensive is the other problem, of course, isn't it, as well, with a lot of blockchain. But I mean, the idea is, we spend a lot of time on this podcast, talking about the ills of the finance sector. This is a system to try and get more people involved in the finance sector, of course. But maybe it's a good thing, because I guess the choice is, and they make this point, that those people with less access to banking services, and obviously there's a hell of a lot of them, they end up paying more. I mean, if you don't get the services that we get, for example, then what you do, you go to a loan shark, and they charge you an arm and possibly a leg, literally, and you don't get the documentation to get access to better deals later in life. So, I mean, it sort of closes that loophole.
Sort of. And this is not a loan. So far as I've seen thus far, it's not a lending platform. It's a transactions platform. And that in that sense. I think what it actually, in terms of existing infrastructure that it's comparable to, it's a bit like the TransferWise service that I use for my international payments, because banks charge I think the banks charge an arm and a leg for transactions. The foreign exchange people charge an arm and a leg for converting your notes from one currency to another. And I think what's actually going on is they've seen that particular market and thought there's a hell of an opportunity there, because people know they're paying an amount they resent each time they do international transactions, and as well as the people who currently can't do them because they don't have access to a banking account at all. But so I think they've seen a market opportunity, a bit like TransferWise itself saw. I think I'm saving several percent on every transaction that I do through TransferWise, and this Libra thing will have a larger infrastructure and be a genuine rather than where TransferWise has a number of bank accounts around the world, and when you make a transfer, effectively they're shuffling between. They'll net out the transactions. So if I'm trying to transfer money from the UK, buy something with the money that came from the UK in somewhere in Europe, then they're shuffling their European and UK bank accounts, and they'll net out somebody else going the opposite direction, and therefore that reduces my costs.
But with their own currency, though, with their own, it's going to be a floating currency. It's going to have a reserve of assets. They make a big point that this is going to be very stable assets, like, for example, presumably US Treasuries and the like, to try and ensure that it's a stable currency. But look, imagine, and they're going to use blockchain, still going to use blockchain as the technology before. But imagine the examples, they're saying this is getting to people who don't currently have a bank account. So let's take Turkmenistan as an example, because 1.8% of the population of Turkmenistan currently have a bank account.
1.8%.
1.8%, yeah.
You do some good research, mate.
So and you can get this from on Business Insider. There's a piece there. I think it comes from the World Bank, actually.
Yeah.
But if you've got 1.8% of the population not having a bank account, say that suddenly moved to the point where 90% of them are now using Libra. What happens to the local currency? As you know, Steve, is the Turkmenistani manat.
Yep, indeed I do, yeah.
What happens to the manat if everyone's using the Libra?
Well, actually, what happens is it's just transferred into a different bank account, because what they're doing is whether the Libra would keep their money in what's the currency called again?
Manat.
It just escaped my mind. Okay. They would then, what they're going to be doing is buying, once people transfer their money, Manaps, into buying Libras, there'll be a Manap Libra exchange rate that gets how many Libras they buy for their Manaps. You have any idea of that one?
No, well, who knows what it's going to be? It's going to be, it's going to change all the time. But I mean, that's the point, isn't it? If the manat is, what control does it give the central bank if no one's using the manat and everyone's using the Libra, and becomes the dominant currency in the country?
Well, it's a question of how much gets converted. If I'm trying to imagine how this would actually be done, because you'd have an electronic currency that people would be transferring out of their bank accounts. Now, but what you're saying is 98% of the population doesn't have a bank account. So if they're going to buy Libras, they've got to convert physical Manaps. Imagine they're using a currency, physical Manaps into Libra, which means they've got to take them to a bank, put them in the bank and say, I want this put into a Libra account, and get a receipt back that effectively means they are now recorded having that many Libras. So they've still got to fundamentally go through a bank to be able to take advantage of that.
Or do they say, well, look, I haven't got a bank account right now. I'm sort of like living in a cash economy, but I'm going to start selling stuff. I might start selling Turkmenistani jumpers, and I'm going to sell them internationally.
And take Libras in payment.
Facebook Market and take Libras as the payment. So I've completely sidestepped the local currency in doing that. I may never use the local currency if I can use the Libra for everything I need.
Yeah. So it becomes a second currency operating inside national boundaries where there isn't an extensive banking system.
It could become a first currency, and that's my point. What happens then?
Yeah.
What control does the central bank have? They could say, "Oh, look, we need to issue more currency," but they can't because everyone's using the Libra. They have no control over their economy.
Well, with 1.8% of the population using bank accounts, everybody else is working in a cash economy. So if you have people buying and selling Libras and using. At the moment, if you're in a cash economy with that currency, which is not accepted anywhere else on the planet, then you certainly can't engage. But if you suddenly, as you say, if you can market stuff and say, I'll take this in Libras, and then people use the Libras for local payment, then you drastically change the economy of those countries. That's true.
And the control over those economies, it's and all of a sudden the Turkmenistani government has very little control.
Well, that may not be much of a change, but yeah,
doesn't change the banking system too much, does it? Really?
No, it is intriguing. I mean, I hadn't thought about that particular end of it. As you say, it will have an impact in those countries. I mean, for another example is Africa, where a lot of people, I think the majority, probably don't have bank accounts, and the telecommunications companies have jumped in there already and set up phone networks which even use audible encryption. So if you want to make a transaction, they'll often put money into somebody's bank account, not bank account, into their telecommunications transactions account, and then each time they make a transaction, they charge a fee on that account. And often the transactions are done by putting two phones together, a 180-degree rotation of one of them, microphone to loudspeaker, vice versa, sending an encrypted code that actually does the transfer. Quite clever in that sense. You don't need a smartphone to do it. This probably, I imagine if they're going to actually target Africa at all, they're going to have a similar idea for Libra too. But it means that what you get is in each of those countries, a internationally accepted international currency will be used as part of the domestic scene. Now, that's a bit like the American dollar being used in these countries, I suppose. But it's electronic, which the American dollar, generally speaking, is not. When you've got it internationally, it's for physical notes. There are more American notes in the rest of the world than there are in America. Yeah, it's got a lot of interesting potential at that end. I've been thinking more about
it's an interesting question about what it means for the US dollar as well, which is used as the world's reserve. If this picks up momentum, does this become the world's reserve?
Well, this is my main thought angle. I've always been a fan of Keynes's Bancor proposal.
Yeah,
on the idea
is that what this is?
This is effectively a private Bancor, which is quite remarkable. I mean, the last place I expected to see it come from, I was focusing more on what I thought Russia and China. I know what they're doing. It's something they have been considering, whether they set up an international parallel currency using a basket of commodities, giving you a currency which you get in international trade that's not tied exclusively to the US dollar. Facebook has gone and done it, which is remarkable because there are a whole lot of other stuff to the Bancor apart from just an international currency. There are rules about trying to limit the level of trade surpluses, which Keynes saw as a damaging thing for the global economy. But that's not, of course, part of this proposal, but it does end up having you a very stable international currency for international transactions. So you can sell stuff from, Turkmenistan to Afghanistan without having a large transaction cost involved. Using a stable international currency.
And then if you're backed by those other platforms like, Facebook's marketplace and, perhaps eBay will get involved in all of this as well. If I'm knitting jumpers in Turkmenistan and I can do it for 1 Libra and somebody in the south of England can only do it for 100 Libra, then people are going to buy it from Turkmenistan, which would be a good thing.
Yeah, it could be quite disruptive, and I'm quite, again, as I said, I'm impressed by the level of thought behind it. And still a lot of people putting it down and saying it's just another transactions payment system. But it's a transactions payment system that's exploiting a very large hole in the banking sector, both in terms of the cost of doing this and the time it takes. I'm used to taking 3 days to make a transfer quite regularly through the international banking system. And then the people often say, look, crypto is much faster. Bitcoin's got yes, faster, but how many transactions per second? It's ridiculous. Whereas 1,000 transactions a second, it's still not of the scale the entire planet needs by a long shot. I haven't ever tried to work it out.
Change.
But it's starting at a scale where you can say this is seriously usable for transactions, whereas Bitcoin is not.
No.
So it's disrupting a lot of things.
Bitcoin was always, wasn't it, a tool for speculation rather than a currency that was usable. Which is, again,
yeah. Well, by the way, eBay is part of the association.
Oh, is it? All right, cool. Okay, well, there we are. They've got it all worked out, haven't they? This new world order. But Bitcoin is so volatile as well. Of course, no one was ever going to use it as a day-to-day currency. So this idea that this is going to be backed by a reserve of assets, which are going to be mainly, I think, government bonds from stable currencies. So lots of U.S. Treasuries, presumably. And it's going to be then a floating exchange rate. It's going to be traded like any other currency. They're saying they're going to choose reserve assets which are going to minimize that volatility, and they're also going to use a good geographic spread as well. So, I'm still trying to figure out whether this is good or bad for the small countries, whether it's going to be, I guess, so long as they still have their own currency, they've still got that ability to, it's a floating exchange rate, I guess. They've still got that ability for people from small countries to be able to say, well, yes, we can sell stuff cheaper, and all we're doing is opening the world to them. Yeah,
and the other side is you can buy stuff with this internationally as well, and do you get a trade deficit out of it, and how on earth do you measure it? It does throw some interesting curlies there. If you... and again, like I mentioned, people in China, I don't know how effective this is going to be in China right now, but there are currency restrictions on how much money you can take out of the country. It's 50,000, something trivial, I think, or 50,000 yuan, but not a large amount per year. Whereas this, what's going to happen here? Will there be restrictions on how many Libra you can take out of China? And then there's a lot of curlies behind it still.
Well, question is, would China know? There's the thing.
With the whole idea with the cryptocurrency, you can't tell how much is being transferred. Yeah.
Which is going to make a lot of countries very uncomfortable, which makes you wonder whether it will get off the ground for that reason. There's no regulation in any of this.
No, there'll have to be at some point, and this is what's being pointed out to Zuckerberg as well. He hasn't done well with regulators so far. Not that they've actually stopped him doing anything, but he's not particularly popular. So it really comes down to, I think they've got to take a backseat role and leave it to whoever they put in charge of the Libra Foundation, who should not be a Facebook ex-Facebook employee, to start doing these negotiations.
Well, they're saying the circulation of this is going to be based on demand. So explain how this... I'll read out what they're saying in the white paper. For new Libra coins to be created, there must be the equivalent purchase of Libra for fiat and transfer of that fiat to the reserve. So on both the investor and the user side, there's only one way to create more Libra, which is by purchasing more Libra for fiat and growing the reserve. So I guess they're saying, look, if we're going to have more Libra, then we need more American dollars, for example.
Yeah, they can't create more Libra without not draining reserves. But if you think about it in terms of a country like America, which of course has its own currency, if anybody, and they've got bank accounts as well, so that anybody in America buys Libra, they'll be transferring American dollars from their account to the Libra account, and the Libra will then use that to either hang on to American dollars, or they'll buy American bonds, or maybe they might buy some British bonds as well. There'll be some diluting that way. But generally speaking, it won't make much of a difference to the reserve base of the countries. And if people want to buy more, then there's got to be more money creation by the American system. Now, of course, that comes back to money being created by the private banks.
Let's go through this step by step. So I'm an American. I've got a bunch of American dollars. Transfer that into Libras. The Libra Foundation says, "Oh, cool, thanks for that. We'll use those American dollars to buy American bonds." So we've got that in reserve. Haven't I therefore taken money out of the U.S. circulation?
You've taken. It depends on whether Libra, how much of the American dollar you buy, they then use themselves buy American assets. Because they buy American bonds, they've got to buy them off.
Then they can get sold.
The money gets transferred to somebody else's bank account in America. But if they buy British pounds, then of course they're going to go overseas. And because you're talking about a basket of commodities, then for every dollar purchased of Libra, there'll be less than $1 of American assets purchased. And that again, that applies to any of those currencies. So it will actually it will involve
It's a powerful position, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, if it was used for evil rather than for good, not that Facebook or any of these other organisations would be involved in that sort of thing, but they could bring countries down if they wanted to.
Well,
they could say, well, okay, let's give you a massive capital outflow right now.
No, then that would undermine the whole logic. That would be the last thing they do. It'll be shut down in an instant if they do that. So I wouldn't worry about that one that much. But I think it is going to because there's such an area to exploit in terms of the cost of bank charges and doing all this. I was expecting telecommunications companies to be the main ones making inroads here, as having in Africa. But for Facebook to make them with the whole collection it's brought together, you look at the companies.
Well, they've got Vodafone, so one of the biggest phone companies.
PayPal, Stripe, Visa, let's see, Spotify, Uber, Vodafone. I haven't noted Bison Trails before. These are blockchain companies. Venture
it's a formidable group of companies, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's for sure.
Yeah. And they're going for 100 by the time they get there. And you've got to putting in, I think, 10 million if you're a blockchain and 100 million if you are. So it's going to be substantially capitalised.
But I mean, they say the aim is to build a permissionless network. So any consumer can use it, any developer can develop on it, any business can use the Libra network. So you can build products on top of it, anything that can add value to the services. In other words, open access with low barriers to entry. They think that's going to create innovation. It's going to create healthy competition that's going to benefit customers. And they say this is foundational to the goal of building more inclusive financial options for the world. I wish I had a bit of echo when I did that, for the world. But I mean, it also lends itself, doesn't it, to money laundering, worldwide scams. Am I alone in thinking there might be a bit of, or perhaps maybe a lot of naivety around all of this? Because, I mean, it could, I mean, we have controls in our own local financial systems, and a lot of them are to stop things like money laundering and scams, some of those scams coming from the banking sector itself. Yeah,
I mean, this is the anti-money launderer, AML, as it's abbreviated, is big bickies inside most of these transactions companies, because they're effectively liable, not necessarily directly, but there's the liability involved if their services are used for money laundering. And of course, the Australian banks are absolutely unimpeachable on that front. Unimpeachable on that front. How did the word impeachable come out?
I'll leave it.
Oh dear.
Or maybe if I get right.
Slip of the tongue. But they, they're like the Commonwealth Bank letting how many 100 million pass through its money laundering net. But yeah, they'll have to seriously make measures about this, because if there's any chance that it can be proven that Libra is used for money laundering, then that's going to result in regulatory tightening on them. So they've got to be covered for that as well, which is difficult when it's going to be semi-anonymous. Yeah.
And around the world. So how many regulations? I mean, do they have to then apply the regulations for each country they're operating in, which could be every country in the world?
Yeah.
And how many of those conflict with each other?
Yeah, so plenty of complexities in getting this working, but it's in the right direction. That's what amazes me. I mean, I've been wanting for ages to see a Bancor-like thing evolve. I was hoping it'd be the Russians and Chinese doing it because of America's bombastic behaviour, but particularly bombastic behaviour at the moment. But it's instead of coming from Facebook and these technology companies and transactions companies, it's amazing how much has been happening. Imagine the number of international flights that have been taken with people carrying spreadsheets with this stuff sitting next to us in planes, because there's a huge amount of coordination going on to come up with this proposal.
But this does give an opportunity for a lot of control, doesn't it? If this conglomerate wanted to do something to bring down a currency or hurt a country by, for example, ensuring one way or another that there was an outflow of capital, then this could be used for bad rather than for good, couldn't it?
Yeah, but I don't think it's again, that would destroy the credibility of the organisation if it was found out. That's grand scale fraud. So you're saying grand scale fraud is possible, but that's the specialty of the banking sector.
Talking about the finance sector. But doesn't this become just another one of the banking sector, I guess, isn't it? Well, does their behaviour become the same as the rest of the finance sector?
To me, it's actually going to be a fairly major challenge to organisations like SWIFT, because they're all set up to handle transactions in American dollars between banks, and this is going to be transaction in Libra between non-banks. So there's clearly going to be ways in which existing power structures are going to want to challenge this. But at the same time, they've got things like MasterCard already in there and Visa. So, I think they've already covered that particular base. So it'd be ludicrous to try to bring down a government that way. I mean, that's one thing you could never accuse SWIFT of, for example, though they did cut Iran out of the payment system at America's behest. Yeah,
and that's always going to be the problem, isn't it? There's going to be geopolitical concerns which could influence the way behaviour operates, but I guess there's no way around that. And except for the fact, if it is totally anonymous, then it's beyond control. In theory, that's the idea behind this model, isn't it?
Yeah, that you can't actually, you're not passing through the banking sector, so the data as to what transfers are occurring isn't being collected by the authorities trying to control it. And that, again, has been the appeal of Bitcoin, that, if you want to transfer your money, you don't need to be controlled by third parties. It's all going through a trustless network. And I think, again, they've managed to cover the problems I see with the trustless network thing in terms of the sheer amount of energy wasted by doing it, by saying there'll be a number of nodes that are involved, but not the sort of, effectively not infinite number, but a huge number that can be in Bitcoin, which of course is part of where they chew up the energy. So it's got me. It certainly is not something I was expecting, and the way it's been designed is more intelligent than I thought. I'm impressed. Yeah.
Should you be able to trade in this currency, though? I mean, that was part of the idea of Bancor, wasn't it? That it shouldn't be used for speculation, and in fact, it would. But the opposite of this being anonymous, Bancor was going to keep track of those international flows because, as you said, the whole idea behind it was to try and make sure trade was balanced, and no such attempt here to do that. Quite the opposite.
Yeah.
Which means people could speculate on it, couldn't they? I mean,
well, the thing is,
it's going to be available at exchanges, so people are going to trade on it.
The trouble is that you wouldn't use it for you wouldn't speculate the value of Libra. You'd use Libra to speculate about the value of other currencies. Because what you'd be looking at is expecting volatility in a particular currency and wanting to hedge with a more stable system. Well, this is the ultimate hedge. Because at the moment, if you want to speculate in American dollars versus Japanese, or say Australian versus Japanese because of the volatility of the Australian, then you'd hedge in a more stable currency like the American in case things don't work out the way you want. This is a much more stable currency for that. So in that sense, it's likely to be a platform as it gets to substantial size, which people use as the reference currency when they're doing international speculation.
Right. Well, the Japanese might like that because, of course, everything goes to the yen. Everyone buys the yen when there's volatility. And, of course, the Japanese don't want the yen to go up in value because they're trying to export stuff. So they could like this. Should it issue loans? We started talking about loans, and obviously it says that we're not going to create any additional currency. But if it's got reserves behind it, presumably there's no reason why it shouldn't. And perhaps that could be a good thing if they change things slightly.
Mate, you got to get with the program here. You don't loan reserves.
I'm just thinking that if you're issuing loans to developing countries, that would be a good thing, wouldn't it?
Well, the question of how the loan's financed, and at the moment, if you want to lend to somebody else Libra, your Libra account has to go down. So there's, this is the whole idea about it being a fully backed system, not one that enables deposit. If they created deposit accounts in Libra, and you could apply for a loan to get Libra allocated as an asset in your account, but also an equal liability to the Libra Foundation, then you would have money creation that way. But I don't think that's been considered, and that would be. I think a lot of banking regulators around the world would have a good reason to shut it down if they tried doing that without getting a banking license.
Yeah, let's say that's our game. We do that. Is there another way they could achieve this, though? If the main aim is not creating a currency that you and I are going to be using, but it's going to be used in Africa, is there a way that they could do this any other way, or are they spot on with this, do you think?
Don't know. I mean, again, you're bound to get people offering. I can see this springing up for sure. If Libra start being used in a national currency, then there'll be a banking system or a loan shark system that develops around that. And, the essential thing in being able to create money is having the right to issue loans that which are on your asset side of the book that increase your liability side, which are the deposits. And so you have to have the deposit capability, and I don't think that's feasible with this system.
And the idea that if this system is enabling commerce in some of these countries on an international scale, that's a good thing. But are there downsides too? I mean, if I'm creating jumpers and I'm selling them at at a Libra price, and my next door neighbour isn't quite so fortunate, am I adding to the wealth divide in my country? Or do you just say, well, no, it's good because we're getting money into the country that wasn't there before?
I think it's more likely increasing economic activity if it happens that way. It's more a case of what does it do to the domestic currency if you get an inflow of Libras into an economy, and then people try to convert from Libras to the domestic currency for purchases they can't make in Libras, or do you completely bypass the domestic currency system? And that's more likely in places like, what was it again, Turkestan?
Yeah. Turkmenistan. Yeah. 1.8% having bank accounts. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, okay. Well, we'll leave it there. It sounds like an interesting development. The big question is, of course, will it work? What do you reckon? Are they onto something, or is it going to? And if it falls down, where's it going to fall down? I suspect it's going to be getting countries to sign up to it and satisfying the regulators.
Well, regulators are going to be the first hard ask, but I think they'll because there's so many blockchains that have started already anyway. I mean, you can create them without needing the okay of the national currency authorities, so they can do that.
That's because they're not in those countries, though. The moment you've got an office location in a particular country, then the regulator can go after you. So sort of over the top currencies, they're just an entity unto themselves, aren't they? But if you've got a Facebook office and this is linked to Facebook in some way, then the regulators can go after you a bit more easily, I suspect.
Well, that's why, again, in terms of that's an advantage to Facebook itself and having Libra as the front for this, because it's not actually Facebook. It's an association based in Switzerland, which is the usual choice for basing an international currency system. I think they've covered that particular one. But, to me, it's it disrupts several things at once. It's disrupting the cryptos because it actually is designed to handle transactions, whereas most of them aren't. And therefore, you get a clash between money as a store of value and money as a means of transactions, which means Bitcoin just aren't used for transactions. This will be used for transactions. You can't accumulate in it because it's not going to increase in price. It's a stable coin, as they call it, and very stable because there'll be a huge reserve backing for it versus the trivial and questionable backings of some of the existing private crypto coins. Blockchain systems, and it's getting around the banks because banks charge you an arm and a leg for international transfers and take forever to do it, and here is charging a minimal amount for transactions, I expect, and relatively instantaneous when they're handling 1,000 transactions a second, which is far beyond the capability of the Bitcoin network. So it does disrupt a lot of things, and also at the same time it's got Visa and MasterCard inside already, so they've got their own interests in getting payments outside of the banking sector. So it's interestingly disruptive technology.
And how's Donald Trump going to take to all of this once he's read the white paper, which might be a bit difficult because it's more than one page long.
And it has
but
words.
Once he's got words in it, exactly. Some of them are 2 syllables or more. But assuming he gets someone reads it for him and explains it to him, because it's interesting, isn't it, how the US were the ones who years ago objected to the Bancor idea, and yet I would have thought this idea of balancing trade the way they are now, they would have been a major beneficiary for it. And is being the reserve currency necessarily a good thing? This is going to take that away from them.
Well, they also might, if you can use Libras for international trade and you don't use the US dollar, then the excess valuation of the US dollar could disappear and you could see the US dollar falling. That'd be an intriguing side effect of this.
Yeah. But that's good for America.
Yeah, I mean, bad for Donald Trump's ego, but good for his loins.
Well, no, he wants the dollar lower, obviously, doesn't he? Because he wants to export more.
He wants an expensive, cheap dollar. Okay,
he wants it all.
He wants it all.
But yeah, I mean, it certainly could be a consequence of all of this, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, let's see how it all develops. 2020 is when they say it's the world is going to change. I wonder how quickly it will change, and I wonder whether, more to the point, I mean, you get back to the first point of all of this, which is that 1 billion people who've got mobile phones who don't have access to any form of bank account. I mean, this could be the making of Africa, I suspect.
Well, I mean, in that sense, the telecommunications were doing it themselves slowly, but this is actually more rapidly because the WhatsApp and WeChat and all those sorts of applications are going to have a button for sending money, which means it's just once you've got an existing account of Libras, then you can just use those social network systems to send money as you send photographs right now, as they say. They want to make it as easy as sending photographs, and that could be cause a major advance in transactions, because we've seen in the past, this is where Christine Desand's research is really interesting, we've seen creating a monetary system actually enabling a market economy to come about. If you don't have the money system, then you don't get the market either. So that could in that sense, catalyse a fair bit of change in countries like Africa and Turkmenistan.
And Europe. Could it coincide with the collapse of the euro?
Well, let's hope so.
Just thought I'd throw that in there to make your day. Good to talk, Steve. We'll catch you again very soon.
Okay, mate. Bye.
Next time, is land tax the best tax? Steve doesn't totally agree with me on this, but I argue that, maybe it's a lot better than income tax. And we find a compromise, which is probably better all around. So if you would like the idea of total tax reforms, pulling it apart and rebuilding it all, we'll do that in an idealistic sort of way next time on the Debunking Economics podcast. I'm Phil Dobbie with Steve Keen. I'll see you then. Thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast, then please share it with your friends, like it on YouTube, and subscribe to this channel.